I nodded. I won't say I trust Dean 100%, but I don't think it'd be smart to refuse right off. Agreed, Wesley said. What would you like us to do in the meantime? Get some rest, but be prepared for anything. Tomorrow I'll take 4 others with me to meet with Dean and his people and see what he has in mind. The crowded room emptied out of everyone but Sade and me. So what's the plan? She asked, sitting on the bed, clasping her hands together. I just told you the plan. No, I don't mean that one. I mean with you and Dean, Sade replied. Everyone is wondering, and because we're the same gender, everyone decided I should be the one to ask. I rolled my eyes and sat next to her. If it didn't involve sports, fire, or hitting something, men were complete cowards. There is no plan. I'm going back home, that's it. Yes, of course. You can't stay here after what Alpha Brent has done, not unless you want to give him dominance over you, but why can't Dean come with us? I chewed my lip as I mulled over the idea, then shook my head. Father would never stand for it, and why would Dean want to come with us? Not to mention, his father wouldn't let him. Sade laughed a soft, dry laugh. Are you sure your father still feels that way? Also, I don't think Dean is the daddy's boy type. After all, he's helping you. You need to sit down and talk with him, Nick. She stood and offered me a smile. I was tempted to scowl back at her. Take your own orders and get some rest. I tried to do just that after she left, but as 9 o'clock approached, I had maybe a few hours of sleep at best. My hand throbbed off and on most of the night, and I couldn't stop thinking of the kiss. Every time I remembered it, my heart would race, and my stomach would clench, forcing me wide awake. One would think that after thinking of it so much the effects would lessen or stop, but they didn't. After showering and forcing myself to eat, I went to see Father. To my surprise, I didn't have any trouble to see him. I'd expected the enforcers would give me a hard time or at the very least be rude, but they weren't. The cell wasn't all that bad either. It was a good-sized room with a solid door, giving him privacy instead of the bar jail I'd been envisioning. Dad sat in a chair, looking out a window when I walked in. Father, I said, falling into military rest. His expression was calm, but his eyes were amber with anger. Everyone's still in this territory. Yes, sir. No one is willing to leave without you. He said, rubbing his chin. Which is why I'm still in here. My eyes widened briefly, and Father chuckled, but it was a bitter sound. It is what I would have done. We're working on getting you out of here. Don't bother, he said, his expression falling for a second before he hardened it again. Father, I'm out of time, and it's too late, Nick, he said, scowling. I've grown old and weak. 20 years ago I would have killed that boy, but now I didn't even land a hit. Father paced the width of the room. It wasn't much space, only enough for 2 or 3 strides. I've lost the pack. Again his expression softened, and this time he didn't try to mask it. My throat tightened as I watched him. I didn't like this fragile, defeated version of Father. I'd rather he yell and demand vengeance. You haven't lost the pack. That fight, if you can call it wasn't a challenge for the pack. It is still yours. He snorted, narrowing his eyes at me. Don't be stupid, girl. It doesn't matter if it was an official challenge or not. He bested me, and that's what matters. Unless some kind of miracle happens, the pack belongs to Dean. I growled at him. I'm not stupid, and I'm not leaving you in here, neither is Dean. He's gonna help me get you out of here. Now quit feeling sorry for yourself and be ready to leave when I come back. With that, I turned and left, hopefully leaving Father to find his backbone. I stormed out of the holding cells, my hand itching to hit something. Too bad I had to go and mess up my hand. 11:12. Dean, what are you doing, Dad? I said when I found him with Mom watching some movie. Isn't it obvious? He replied, tilting his head towards the screen. I crossed my arms over my chest. No, I'm serious here. Why are you keeping Alpha Joseph in a cell? Mom and Dad shared a glance before he sighed, paused the movie, and sat up straighter. I'm giving you time to figure out what you're going to do. Yeah, because making Nick hate our family and nearly causing a war is going to give me so many options. I told you it wasn't a good idea, Mom said to Dad, popping a piece of popcorn in her mouth. It's a very good idea, Dad said, and stood. He pulled down the hem of his shirt and looked at me. If I didn't do what I did, you would have had no options because Nicole would have left. Thanks to my playing the big bad wolf, she's not only here giving you time to decide what to do, but you two are going to be working together to free her father. I jerked back in surprise. He knew. Dad laughed and shook his head. I'm the Alpha, Dean. How would something like that not get back to me? I'm not going to hinder his rescue. It'll be good for you to play the hero, save her dad from the evil alpha. It'll probably warm her up to you, and it will give you time to decide. A sour, bitter taste filled my mouth. Decide what? I said finally. Again, Dad sighed. To accept her as your mate. Why wouldn't I? Me accepting her had never been the question. The only issue here was if Nick would accept me. She's a headstrong woman who is determined to lead her pack. Everyone knows how much you loathe the idea of being in the alpha position, yet if you accept her as your mate, that's exactly where you're going to be. In all honesty, Dean, you're going to have to change drastically if you want to accept this position. She and her pack will depend on you to take care of them. I opened my mouth to reply, then closed it. My thoughts never really went that far. True, I didn't want to be alpha. All the crap with politics and having to decide the future of everyone. So much was left on the alpha's shoulders, and one mistake very well might mean life or death. My chest tightened, and it was hard to breathe whenever I imagined what that kind of responsibility would feel like. Exactly, Dad said, obviously reading my thoughts on my face. So you need to decide, and soon. You'd made a great alpha, Dean, Mom said, setting aside the popcorn. Dad glanced at her for a moment. It's really not a horrible thing, and you wouldn't be alone. Nicole would be there to help. She'll need him to be alpha, Emily. Everyone will expect it, Dad said, and looked to me. Go on, play hero and make the decision. My mood was awful, and I wasn't sure what to say, so I left. Funny, not 20 minutes ago, I just kissed Nick. She didn't kill me for it, and I was on top of the world. In my room, I sat on the bed and sighed. I hated this. I hated all of it. Why had Nick and I been paired? She didn't need me. Nick didn't need anyone, not even her father, despite what she believed. I was a clown and a fool. I like to make people laugh, not give them orders. Why couldn't Nick have just been an enforcer? That way neither of us would have to change or give up anything we loved. The whole night my mind whirled, and when it came time for morning, I doubt I slept a wink. I got up and showered. I had no doubts they'd help Nick and her people. No, the only doubts I had were the ones Dad gave me. They aided me to the point I was ready to release Nick's dad on my own and tell them all to go. I walked into the gym, surprised Mike was there. Cousin Dino, what's up? Mike said as a greeting. Hey, I replied. Shouldn't you be in the alpha meetings? You're kidding me, right? Mike said with a laugh. I wouldn't last 10 minutes in there before I decided to kill them all and just be done with it. All that is more Alice's thing. But you're the alpha. So the fuck what? She's the Luna and good at all the diplomacy shit, Mike said, then shrugged. I rubbed the back of my neck. Yeah, you got a point there, and it works for you guys. What do you think, Dino? He shot back, glaring at me. Do you want something, or are you going to stand there and gossip like a chick? I returned his glare and threw in a scowl for good measure. You're a real ass, you know. Yeah, and go cry to mommy if you want. I don't give a shit. I laughed and shook my head. Whatever, man. I left the gym into the dining hall for lunch. I didn't feel like jumping in the conversation much as I joined my brother and the others. My head was too wrapped up in what both Dad and Mike said. Everything okay, Dean? Carr asked once we sat in the game room waiting for Nick and her people. Yeah, thinking about things, and no. Oh my God, it's time for the devil to get himself a winter coat cause hell just froze over, and he said with a snicker. Ha ha, I said blandly. Don't worry, Dean. It's all going to work out, Brooke told me, giving me a hug. You're too nice to him, Ryder complained. Face it, she just likes me better than you, I said, hugging her back and smirking at him. Please, you can't handle your woman. What makes you think you can handle mine? Ryder replied. Oh, really? Brooke said. So I'm hard to handle, am I? She put her hands on her hips and gave Ryder a scathing glare that made him squirm. I didn't say that, he said quickly. Is there some other meaning to the phrase that I don't know about? Brooke insisted, her foot tapping. Ryder glared at me, then looked past me. Look, there's Nick. How about we get started, eh? Chicken, I snickered and turned to face Nick and her people. She brought the beta, John, and two guys, I assume enforcers, with her. My amusement died seeing her expression, though. She looked angry. What happened? Yes, let's get started, she said as she sat on one of the bar stools and looked at Ryder. Why would the future alpha go against his father's orders to help me? Again, Ryder squirmed. Well, I've been told I'm not exactly going against Dad's orders. Figuring he meant Brooke, I looked at her, but she looked a little confused by the statement as well. Did Dad encourage Ryder to help? Was Ryder the one who told him about the rescue plan? Something twisted in my gut. They started making plans about how to rescue Nick's father, but I didn't pay attention. Instead, I couldn't get past how this was all manipulated so I would seem like the good guy, but if I went along with this, if I let Nick believe she had to rescue her father, did it really make me a good guy? Wasn't I just as manipulative as Dad was? My stomach twisted sickly. We're not doing this, I said suddenly. Everyone stopped to look at me as if I'd lost my mind. I didn't care. I couldn't do this. I couldn't let Nick be manipulated, even if it made me appear good. I walked over, took her by her good hand. Come on, we need to talk. I admit I was a little surprised. She let me lead her out of the room. What's going on, Dean? She asked, a suspicion in her tone. I didn't answer right away, but stopped in one of the seldom used offices on the top floor. We're not rescuing your father, I told her. She pulled her hand from mine, her eyes instantly flaring up with anger. I told you I wasn't going to stay, Dean. If you think that, kiss her. We're not rescuing your father, I said, stopping her. Because he doesn't need to be rescued. Her enraged expression smoothed into confusion. What? My father is in a cell. I saw him this morning. Of course, but if we go right now and tell the enforcers to release him, they will. It's all a trick to keep you here. Even this stupid rescue is a rouse. What are you talking about? I sighed and shook my head as I plopped down on one of the couches. Dad knew about the plan and told me to keep playing the part. Hell, I suspect he told Ryder to help us. It wasn't Brooke who told him that bit about going against orders. I could tell by the look on her face. Nick's jaw visibly clenched as she looked down at me. Why are you telling me this? Choices, remember. I don't want to pretend to be the good guy here, Nick. I want to be the good guy. I can't ever ask you to accept me in all my foolishness if I'm tricking you to do so. Neither of us deserves that. Nick sat on the couch from across from me. So what happens now? A weight settled over my shoulders. I take you to go get your dad out, and you go home. You do that. I mean, honestly, what about the whole mate thing? A small smile tugged at the edge of my lips. That's up to you, Nick. What do you want to do about it? I want to get to know you, all of you, and see where this whole mate thing takes us. Her body stiffened, and she chewed on her lip as she considered it. Her expression gave none of her thoughts away, and it drove me nuts. I wasn't a leader like my brother, and I wasn't an ass-kicker like Mike. I was a nurse, and it's what I like being. I wished if she were going to reject me, she'd just get it over with. Let's see if you're right first. Let's get father out, then we'll deal with it. I nodded and stood, not sure if I should be relieved she didn't outright refuse or be frustrated she didn't give any sort of answer or indication to what her thoughts were. I forced a grin on my face. Again, your faith in me, beautiful, is so awe-inspiring. 12:13. Dean's confession about his father's games only made my anger with father's defeated attitude grow. How could he be so ready to give up when all that happened was he lost to Dean while throwing a fit? At this moment, I was starting to believe Dean would be better for the pack than father, seeing as he was taking me to let father out, or so he claimed. It wasn't that I doubted him. Dean so far hadn't given me any reason to, but with the games his father seemed to be playing, I didn't want to get my hopes up. My stomach roiled with nerves as the question of what next pressed against my mind. If all went according to plan, father would be free, and we'd leave. What would happen with Dean? I chewed on my lip as we walked. I had to be honest, Dean made the whole mate thing seem not so bad. We'd have to get to know each other more, obviously, but how? I couldn't stay here, not after everything that had happened. Maybe he'd be willing to come with us. It didn't have to be anything permanent, but something like a couple of weeks or a month. Hey, Dean, what brings you this way? One of the enforcers said to him when we walked into the holding area. Dad's little game is over, and we're here to get her dad out, he replied, crossing his arms over his chest. The man looked at him confused. We've already let him out, he said, scratching the back of his head. The new Alpha demanded it, and Alpha Brent told us to comply. What new Alpha? I demanded. There was no new Alpha, and if they wanted to be stupid about it, then Dean would be the new Alpha. Yeah, what she said, Dean said, when the enforcer didn't answer me. That one, he said, turning and pointing as father and another man walked into the room. My jaw dropped as I stared at the man with father. How is he here? He was no father couldn't have. Hello, sis, my long-lost brother, Brandon.